Somewhere Better by I_am_Ellie on AO3. Episode 45. Chapter 5. Bullies. Big and Small. Shouta had a fairly uneventful work day. Another thing that absolutely did not happen on his damned holiday. He had been on edge throughout the entire day, and it was starting to fray on his nerves. He wanted to find whoever thought April Fool's was a good idea for a holiday and punch them in the face. It was 30 minutes before his lunch break, and Shouta was working on something on the computer, a scheduling conflict, for the month of April. He had gotten halfway through when Hizashi came rushing through the door, Nemuri close behind him, looking worried and a bit angry. "Pack your things, we have to go," Hizashi said, closing his arms close to his chest. It was odd, seeing Hizashi in his hero persona angry. It didn't happen often. "What happened?" Shouta asked, grabbing his bag from under the desk and packing his things away. All his nervousness over the April Fool's relatively forgotten. "We have to get to Izuku's school. The kid got himself in trouble," Hizashi states. He had his messenger bag over one shoulder, and they looked even odder in the present mic gear. "They couldn't get a hold of you, so they called Nemuri and I." "I turned it off," Shouta said, feeling a bit foolish for doing so. He had a kid in primary school who had a pent for causing trouble, and his teachers. And he turned his phone off. That was just perfect. "Doesn't matter now," Nemuri said. "You guys have to get going. Do you want me to come?" "Yes," Hizashi said, and Shouta nodded. "If this is anything like last time, and they pulled us from work for no good reason, we're going to need your help," Shouta said. Nemuri nodded. They explained the situation to Nezu. He told them that they were welcome to leave, and that he would see them again tomorrow. They all piled into Shouta and Hisashi's car, since Izuku's car seat was in it, and they weren't sure if they would have to take the kin home or not. It was a 30-minute ride to Izuku's school, and the group climbed out of the car. There were older kids on the playground, and Shouta could see them pointing at them from the corner of his eyes. "Is that Present Mike? I listen to his radio every Friday. Is that Midnight? Who's that skinny guy with him? Why are they at our school?" When they walked into the school, heading straight to the front office, where Izuku was sure to be. Denki, Izuku, and a purple-haired boy Shouta thought might be named Hitoshi were sitting against the back wall in 3 chairs. Besides Hitoshi was a tired-looking man in a white coat, purple hair a few shades lighter than Hitoshi's. Hitoshi was leaning against his side heavily, and the man was running a hand through the boy's hair, and he in no way looked happy to be there. In the chair beside Denki was a man and a woman. The man had dark hair and bright yellow eyes, while the woman looked more like Denki with shaggy yellow hair, though she had dark brown eyes. Hitoshi sat up quickly as soon as they stepped into the room, staring at them with wonder in his eyes. No, not Nemuri and Hizashi. He was staring at Shouta. Why would he be staring at Shouta? Hitoshi pulled at the sleeve of his father's lab coat, insistently, pointing at Shouta. "Hello?" Shouta said gruffly. "Eraserhead?" the man in the lab coat asked, and Shota's eyes widened. "Well, what do you know? My son's a big fan of yours." Hitoshi was bouncing in place in his seat. Shouta wasn't sure what to do. This had never really happened before. People weren't just fans of Eraserhead. No one was supposed to know who Eraserhead was. It was the whole point of him being an underground hero. "Nice to meet you," Shouta finally greeted. Hitoshi smiled widely. Shouta thought Nemuri and Hizashi were trying to keep from laughing. He, Hizashi, and Nemuri sat in 3 of the 4 extra chairs on the opposite wall. Izuku ran over to sit next to them, leaning his head against Nemuri's shoulder. "Hey, Tiger," Nemuri greeted, and Izuku hummed in response. "Wanna tell us why we're here?" Izuku shrugged. "I don't know either." Denki's face was blotchy and his nose was red, like he had been crying, and he sniffed loudly. Shouta thought the boy might start crying again. We're here because our son thought it would be a great idea to cheat. The black-haired man groused. And we have to take off of work to deal with your mess. Denki sank lower to his chair. I didn't cheat, Denki mumbled, and the man sighed, like they'd been through this before. Just shut up, Denki, the man said, and the purple-haired boy's eyes narrowed at the man. He looked a bit angry. Izuku looked a bit angry, too. The principal is busy with another kid, so it's going to be a while. The man looked less than pleased at that prospect. We're fine waiting, Hizashi said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his legs. Shouta didn't say anything, leaning back further in his chair. Nemuri hummed in agreement. The purple-haired man sighed and glanced at his watch. Not enough hours in a day, he said grumly, but I can wait. Well, we don't exactly have a choice in the matter. The black-haired man grippled. Honey, please stop, the shaggy-haired woman said placatingly. It is not my fault the little shit can't go a week without causing trouble in the classroom, Denki's father exclaimed. He goes and he causes trouble when we're at work making money so he can live comfortably, and he... Shouta tuned the arguing couple out, attention falling back on the little boy. The 5-year-old boy. They were talking about a 5-year-old boy like that. He had his shoulders bunched up near his ears, and he was staring at the carpet. He was hugging himself, hands running up and down his upper arms, like he was cold. He looked like he was seconds away from crying again. Shouta wasn't sure if he was supposed to say something or not. It wasn't his family, wasn't his child. He didn't know the entire situation, and therefore it was not well into his rights to say anything. But he wanted to say something, because the boy looked like he was about to start crying, and they were talking about a 5-year-old kid like that. If they had talked about Izuku like that, his ward like that, he wasn't sure what he would do. But he wasn't involved in this kid, at all. He barely interacted with the child, so he wasn't sure what he was going to do now, either. Hizashi looked like he wanted to say something. Nemuri looked like she was looking for some excuse to do something. Watching the couple, particularly the father, very, very carefully. The woman seemed to notice the attention they were getting, seemed to feel the glares of the pro-heroes and the other 5-year-olds on her back, and stopped abruptly. You're right, the woman said stiffly. I'm sorry. Denki's mouth flattened out into a thin line. The woman glanced at him. No, thanks, she said, running a hand through his hair. Didn't you brush your hair this morning? It's so nappy. Sorry, Mama, Denki croaked, rubbing his eyes. The woman looked at him softly, and she looked a little sad while she did. Shouta had a feeling that this was a family dynamic he would never begin to understand. We'll brush it when we get home, the woman promised, kissing the boy's forehead. When we get home, that boy's going straight to bed, Denki's father said vermontly. Stop crying, Denki. You're a big boy, not a baby. Denki blinked hard, taking a deep breath and holding it in, cheeks going round like he was trying to stop himself from having the hiccups. He looked rather like a chipmunk. Shouta saw a movement from the corner of his eye. Izuku sitting forward, away from Nemuri, and giving the man his fiercest glare, which was not very fierce, though Shouta imagined that Denki would appreciate the effort later on. Don't tell him that, Izuku snapped. Don't talk to him like that. He's allowed to cry. It's good to cry, and big boys can cry too. Big boys especially. He had to sound out the last word, because he had only just learned it, and it was a difficult word for the child to pronounce. You've been nothing but a big bully this whole time. You should be ashamed of yourself, Mr. Kaminari. Izuku, Shouta said sternly, and the child looked over at him, with fire burning in his eyes. Stop, right now. Shouta hadn't raised his voice, because he knew he hated when other people raised his voice, so he wasn't going to do the same. But Izuku got the message. He slumped back in his chair, arms crossed over his belly, hands clenched tight into little fists at his sides. Learn to control your son, Mr. Kaminari said, angrily, eyes narrowed. We will be talking about this when we get home. Don't worry. Hizashi promised. He had no right. We are well aware, Hizashi said, uncrossing his legs and gripping the arms of his chair tightly. We will be taking care of it, believe me. Mr. Kaminari nodded, looking satisfied, and relaxed slightly. Shouta took a deep breath, counted to 10, let it out slowly. He hated this, hated everything about it. Yelling always put him on edge. The sound was so ugly to his ears. But this whole situation was 100 times worse than he was used to. Shinsou, Kaminari, Midoriya. The principal called from his office. The three groups stood up, walking into the office. There wasn't enough chairs in the room, so Shouta, Mr. Kaminari, Mr. Shinsou, and the three children sat down, while the rest of the adults were left standing at the side of the room. Let's start with why you were called in here today. The principal began. Your children's teacher had reason to believe that either Midoriya or Shinsou helped Kaminari cheat on a math test. Forgive me for saying that I have trouble believing that, Mr. Shinsou said, tilting forward in his chair. My kid was diagnosed with social anxiety and selective mutism. He barely speaks to me, not to mention he's not exactly a superstar in math. It doesn't seem like he would be the logical perpetrator out of the two of them. No offense, Eraser. Shouta grunted. Do you have anything to add, Hitoshi? The principal asked, turning to Hitoshi. I just told you he can't talk. The purple man snapped, running a heavy hand down his face. Did you help Kaminari cheat, Hitoshi? The principal asked, and Hitoshi slowly shook his head. He didn't cheat, Izuku shouted. Izuku, it is not your turn to speak, Shouta said, and Izuku's mouth shut with an abrupt click. No, please, the principal said, waving his hand. What do you think happened, Izuku? Denki was having trouble with his math questions, Izuku began. He was having trouble reading kanji, and the questions were really boring, so I helped him look at the problem differently. I read them in a different way, but Denki got to the answers all by himself. All I did was show him in a different way, that's all. Midoriya, the principal said. You aren't supposed to talk in tests at all. He was having trouble. You're supposed to help people when they're having trouble. It's a nice thing to do. Midoriya, look, Mr. Shinsou said. Why do you think the kid was cheating anyways? Do you have any probable evidence at all, or did you come to this conclusion through one of your bullshit feelings? Denki, I'm sure, is a good kid, the principal said, face looking a bit strained, and Mr. Kaminari scoffed, like he didn't believe him. Izuku looked angrier, and Hitoshi was staring at Mr. Kaminari like he was trying to work something out in his brain. But he doesn't have a history of making very good grades, so the teacher found it a bit suspicious when he made 100 on a test, when he hasn't ever made grades like that before. Sir, you called me away from the hospital a few minutes before I was scheduled to perform life-saving surgery on a young lady's brain because a little boy made a good grade on a test? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Is this some kind of April Fool's joke or something? Because I'm not seeing how this is supposed to be funny. Sir, you have to understand, a kid seemed dumb. And then he starts making good grades after another kid explains the problems a bit better to him. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a good thing to me. It means the boy found a way to learn and make the grade in a way that is successful. That's not something you call him into an office for. That's something you jot down in one of your little files so this kid gets some extra help. The principal looked like a fish out of water, gaping. If that's all, and you have a kid who confessed to this supposed cheating, then I'll be on my way. I missed my surgery, so I'll be taking my son home early. Come on, Hitoshi. The man and boy stood up. Hitoshi grabbed his father's hand and hid behind his lab coat, so they walked out of the room, door closing behind them. Izuku will be accepting any punishment you dish out, however unwarranted it may be, and we'll be on our way as well. Sir, you can't just... We have places to be after this, sir, Shouta stated firmly. The man sighed heavily. looking as if he had aged several decades in the past 5 minutes. One day in school suspension, the man finally decided. Denki gets 2. Thank you, Shouta said. Have a good day. He stood up, and Nemuri and Hizashi pushed themselves off the wall, Izuku running forwards to hold Hisashi's hand. They checked the child out and walked out of the school. When we get home, Shouta stated from the passenger seat, once they were all in the car. After your appointment, you will do your chores, you will eat, and you will go to bed. You will do the same thing tomorrow. What? Izuku asked. Why? You involved yourself in matters that in no way concerned you, Shouta stated. You were very disrespectful to Denki's father. You were disrespectful to the principal. You were talking during a test. I can go on. But I did that for Denki. I did it because he was being mean to Denki. You should have let an adult handle that, Shouta said. It wasn't your place to say anything. You have to understand that, right now, adults are more likely to listen to other adults than to children. But he was being a bully. He was acting like a villain. Dad shouldn't act like villain to their kids. They shouldn't. I was trying to be a hero like you. Heroes know when to pick their battles, Shouta said evenly. When they're obviously outmatched, they wait for someone to help them. That's what you should have done. Pick and choose your battles, Cabbage. But I know, it doesn't seem fair, Shouta said. But what you did today was wrong, and irresponsible, and disrespectful. That's why you were in trouble. Izuku's eyes were red and glassy. That's why you're in trouble, and that's why you're going to bed early. And because you tried to help and defend your friend, you get extra dessert after dinner. Izuku perked up slightly. Oh, Izuku said. Is this one of those things where you gotta act mean and stuff because you want to be a good parent so I don't get into my rebellious phase early? Nemuri and Hizashi snorted in unison. Yes, Shouta said. Izuku hummed. Okay. Shouta slumped a bit in his seat and leaned his head against the cold window. This is what people meant when they talked about the bad side of parenting. Shouta would have taken a million pranks from Hizashi to avoid having to feel this again. I hate Denki's parents. Hate. I loathe Denki's parents. Absolutely hate. And I hope you guys hate them too. I really do. I really do, because what the absolute living fuckery. What the fuck? Okay? Look, I love certain moments in this chapter, obviously. Obviously, I love the fact that Hitoshi is an Eraser Mike fan and that Eraserhead, Aizawa here, does not know what to do with that. The fact that, obviously Shinsou, Mr. Shinsou, popped off. We love that. We love that. Motherfucker stood up for his child, which I love that for Shinsou. The fact that he actually has parents that care for him for once in a fanfiction. Oh my god! Surprise! Shinsou has caring parents. That is a shocker. But I love that. I love that. But I want to talk about Denki and his situation and his parents. I hate his parents. I hate the way that they are treating him, the way that they are talking about him, this 5-year-old kid, in front of this 5-year-old kid. And I want to talk about the school system. So obviously Denki has ADHD, clearly. I know for a fact with my sibling, my youngest, who has ADHD, and as someone who has to sit in, who once at one point had to sit in with him in class because the school themselves could not understand how to help this kid, how to help my sibling, my brother, and I had to sit there and, actually help him learn. I realized that he does not excel great in a big group of people. Not only because the group of people distract him, but because he has to go at their pace, and he does not wish to go at their pace. He wished to go at his pace. If it was up to him, he would finish a page of math. He would finish all his math lesson instead of in an hour, in 30 minutes, right? He does not need the extra time. He knows his math. He is quite smart. I'm not joking. My brother is super smart. he learned to read before kindergarten. It wasn't amazing reading, but he learned certain words and understood and started to sound out, right? And obviously, the school did not understand this, and the school we're having a fighting battle with the school. For a while, we thought we had a peaceful moment, and now they're treating as though some of his necessities that he needs, stuff that is written down in his 504 plan are privileges, and not necessities. Like his breaks that he very desperately needs for him to be able to excel in class without having him become impatient and overly active and, might I say, unmanageable, because let's be honest, sometimes he can be unmanageable when he does not have his breaks, right? They are thinking of that as a privilege. And we're frankly done with the fucking school, because we have been fighting for 2 school years with this school. We have been fighting with them. It is exhausting. It is draining. And barely now they're starting to understand that maybe there's something wrong. Maybe this kid does need some extra help. And it is preposterous. It is preposterous. But enough of that. Point taken is, I understand that sometimes schools are stupid and dumb and hatred. And I hate Izuku's school in this instance, because clearly they are not seeing the fact that maybe Denki needs help. Maybe Hitoshi can't speak because he is literally diagnosed with social anxiety and selective mutism. I'm sorry, he is diagnosed. There is no buts, there is no ifs. He is diagnosed. Therefore, you as a school need to have, a plan to help him out, right? Accommodations. Not privileges. Accommodations. Obviously, in the Denki situation, Denki does have ADHD. It is canonical. It is one of the tags. He has ADHD. And clearly, he's not getting help. And I do not think that his parents are also going to acknowledge the fact that their son needs to be evaluated. I highly doubt that, because they seem like those type of parents. Currently, there's a family member on My Family where the kid literally is showing textbook, I'm not joking, textbook symptoms of being neurodivergent, leaning towards autism. But it could be ADHD, but it's leaning heavily towards autism for the simple fact that the child is nonverbal. Certain characteristics of his line up with autistic symptoms, and the fact that the school is literally begging for them to get him evaluated. The school is begging, and they keep refusing. They keep saying, like, no, nothing's wrong with our son. He's just a little peculiar. Nothing's wrong with our son. And literally, our side of the family, right, my mom, my grandma, like, all of them are like, hey, you do need to get him evaluated. Because if he does not get the help he needs now, which, I'm pretty sure he's probably going to end up being of high needs, because as I said, he is nonverbal. He is barely now speaking, and he is 8 years old. Right? He is completely nonverbal. Not completely, but he is very heavily nonverbal. And I'm surprised that the school hasn't done more, if I'm being honest. But then again, the parents keep saying no. They keep saying that nothing's wrong. And I remember I heard a conversation between my mom and my grandma, and my mom said these words that I very much agree. They could keep pretending that there is nothing with their son, that there is no need to have an evaluation, but their son is not neurotypical. They could keep pretending he is, but that will not change the fact that he is not neurotypical and he is neurodivergent. And the fact that they keep denying him the help he so desperately needs because he is starting to fail at school is only going to detriment the child further. Because if he does not excel in school and they hold him back a year because the parents decided not to get them the help he needs, that is on the parents. And I fear that this is what would happen with Denki, right? That they're not going to understand that Denki has ADHD, that Denki needs certain accommodations to excel in school. But they're not going to accept that, are they? They seem like the parents who will just ignore it and think that their child is, a neurotypical child. No, your child is not. Your child, literally, it is stupid. It is like saying a child who broke their leg does not need a fucking cast and crutches. I cannot sympathize with those type of parents, but enough of that. I'm gonna move on to the topic of the school and how they handled this. I'm sorry, but this child starts to excel. Like Mr. Shinsou said, the child starts to excel and become good because another child helped him understand in a certain way that would make him excel, and they're calling him a cheater. As someone, me, who has been in a similar situation, when I was in elementary school, I was always in risk of falling back. Always. Always. All the way up to the 5th and 6th grade. Teachers and the principal would always tell my mom, hey, we believe that it would be best if you hold your son back a year. And my mom, thank the Lord, always said no. She always said to keep me going into the next year and to not hold me back. Because somehow deep down, she knew that I wasn't stupid. But the school clearly did think that. The school clearly did think that I needed to be held back a year. And you know what? My mom never told me any of this. Till later down the road, now that I'm older. She now tells me now this. She now informs me of the fact that was happening when I was a little kid. Shit, I acknowledged it. Fuck. Oh god. Okay, I'm going to ignore it. So that did not happen. Okay, as I was saying... What was I saying? I do not know what I was saying. Give me a second. I'm gonna go cleanse my house. I have cleansed the house. Okay, that was creepy. I'm going to tell you guys what just happened. So I just heard a whistle and my stupid ass turned my head towards the whistle. It is literally 12:20 p.m. at night. So, first of all, nobody is up in my house. Everybody is fast asleep. I heard a whistle coming from my doorway. My doorway, which I know for a fact no one is there. So me hearing a whistle and then me turning my head, acknowledging it, was a horrible idea. And then the fact that I changed the way I was speaking, acknowledging the fact that I heard it even more. So I had to go really quickly, cleanse my whole room and the house while at it. Those of you who do not know, if you hear a whistle at night, do not acknowledge it at all. Move on. It is not your business. You do not want it to be your business. Moving on to what I was saying, because I will not draw more attention to it as I have already. I feel safe. I have cleansed. My room is safe. My familiar is with me. I am good. Alright? But I'm not going to draw more attention to it. But as I was saying, I grew up in similar circumstances like Denki. I grew up what many teachers consider to be the stupid kid. And I was in a similar situation to Denki around the 5th, 6th grade. Specifically, it was the 6th grade. So in the 6th grade, I had 3 teachers. One of them was my main teacher, my homeroom teacher, per se. This is the teacher that I would go to for history and overall literally anything else, right? And then I had my English teacher and my math teacher. But my homeroom teacher was literally my teacher for everything else, right? Everything. We needed to do state testing, we would do it in her classroom. Like literally anything, her classroom, right? She was our main teacher. She was my main teacher. And I loved that teacher because that teacher was the first teacher who made me feel smart, who made me feel as though I was not dumb, and made me understand certain subjects in a certain way. And honest to God, helped me enough to be able to understand learning in a way where I would be able to actually learn. And I would no longer be considered the dumb kid. Now, when I started to excel in most of my grades and most of the subjects, right? out of my 3 teachers that I had, my main teacher, my homeroom teacher, she was happy for me. She was ecstatic. She was happy the fact that she could help me. My other 2 teachers thought of me a cheater. They thought of me a cheater. They saw the fact that I was actually starting to learn, that I was starting to get good grades. And instead of celebrating with me, instead of maybe doing nothing, instead of that, every time we took a test, they would keep a watchful eye on me. Whenever there was a test being taken, they would always have their eye on me. If they were walking around the classroom to make sure people weren't cheating, they would always make lap around my area more than anywhere else. Whenever we would be doing individual work by ourselves, same thing, keeping an eye on me, and if they're walking around, would always walk around in my area. And I noticed it. I very much noticed it with both teachers. And I remember the first day I truly sinked in the fact that, oh, they're doing this because they think I'm cheating. I was upset. They might have not called my parents and outright said I was cheating, but it hurt. Not only because, obviously, I'm being called a cheater when I'm not a cheater, but because they think the possibility of me cheating is more probable than the possibility of me actually being smart. And that hurt a lot as a little kid. And I cannot imagine how much that hurt for Denki. The fact that instead of thinking, oh, he finally did something, or he finally learned, he finally did something to understand, or he finally learned, or finally the way I'm teaching is finally getting to him, instead of thinking that, the first thought is, you must have cheated. Because there's no way you could have gotten a high score otherwise. What does that do for the child? I'll tell you. It destroys their self-esteem. It demolishes it. After that, I truly thought of me as a stupid person. Middle school went by and I genuinely thought of me as a stupid person. I got good grades, but deep down, I always thought, I'm stupid. Does it really matter if my grades are good? In the end, I am just a stupid person. This destroys a child's self-esteem. This is horrid, and I hate the teacher for thinking Denki a cheater before thinking that Denki could actually be smart. Because he is smart. Just because a kid is not having good grades does not mean they're stupid. It could simply mean they're not paying attention, they're not putting the effort, they're not understanding the subject fully, or you're not explaining it in a way that they understand, or simply just because they're not good at mathematics does not mean that they're stupid. Just because they're not good at English literature does not mean they're stupid. Just because they're not good at science does not mean they're stupid. I hate his teacher, and I hate fucking Kaminari's parents. I fucking hate them with a passion. I want to burn them in a stake, like they burned the witches. Burn the bitches! Burn the bitches! Everybody put in the comments, burn the bitches, with little fire emojis. Anyways, that's all. I think I've said enough, and I wish to sleep. And also do another round of cleansing. Because I would feel safer that way. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.